Right now, at 301 Mission Street in San Francisco, a 58-story skyscraper is still leaning, not collapsing, not evacuated, still occupied. 419 luxury condominiums. The fix is done. The press conference happened. The lead engineer signed off, and the building is still tilting nearly 29 inches at its northwest corner. They spent over $100 million. The tower is still moving. That is what this video is about. But first, let's go back to when this was supposed to be perfect. In 2009, the Millennium Tower was not a problem. It was a symbol. The San Francisco Chronicle covered the opening like a red carpet event. It was the tallest, all-residential skyscraper west of Chicago. 645 feet of glass and luxury concrete rising above the financial district. Units sold for between $1.6 million and $10 million. The entire building sold out by 2013 for a combined $750 million. In less than 5 weeks of sales, buyers put down over $100 million in contracts. Former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Joe Montana bought a unit. The building won awards from the American Society of Civil Engineers and the American Concrete Institute. An award-winning skyscraper in San Francisco's most expensive zip code, built to last. The first sign that something was wrong appeared in 2008, not after the opening, during construction. By March 2008, a full year before the tower opened to residents, internal measurements showed the building had already settled beyond its original geotechnical projections. It was documented in writing, in an engineering report, and then the project kept going. This is the story of the leaning luxury, the Millennium Tower, how it got approved, how it started failing, who signed off, what they did when it got worse, and what is happening right now that most local news is not covering. Let's get into it. Before we continue, subscribe, because this channel covers the stories that local news runs for 2 days and then buries. What you're about to find out about this building is still active, and the next skyscraper in this series makes this one look like a crack in the sidewalk. Here is the thing nobody explains properly about why this building is sinking. San Francisco sits on a geological mix of bedrock, sand, and something engineers call Old Bay clay, a soft, compressible marine deposit that was underwater for thousands of years. The Millennium Tower sits on layers of this clay, covered by dense sand, at a site reclaimed from San Francisco Bay. Underneath that, 200 feet of compressible material before you reach solid bedrock. Here is the critical decision made in 2005, when construction began. Most skyscrapers in San Francisco are anchored to bedrock. The Salesforce Tower next door has piles drilled 300 feet down to solid rock. The Millennium Tower's foundation is different. It rests on approximately 950 precast concrete friction piles, driven only 60 to 90 feet into dense sand. Not bedrock. Those piles grip the sand through friction along their sides. But under 11,000 tons of steel and concrete, that sand compresses over time. Geotechnical engineers call this process consolidation. The layperson term is, it sinks. The original predictions said the building would settle a maximum of 4 to 6 inches over its entire lifespan. By the time residents moved in, it had already settled more than 10 inches. The building was supposed to sink a maximum of 6 inches in 20 years. It sank more than 10 inches before anyone moved in. And here is the number that matters. Drilling the foundation piles to bedrock would have added approximately $4 million to the original construction cost. The total project cost $350 million for $4 million more, or about 1.1% of the budget. This story might never have happened. That is just the technical side. Here is where the engineering becomes a decision, and the decision becomes a name. The warning signs were there from the beginning, not in hindsight, in writing. During construction by March 2008, monitoring data showed the building had already exceeded its original settlement estimates, documented, reported to the relevant parties. Then, in February 2009, just before the tower opened, the settlement estimates were officially revised upward as part of the permitting process. Let that sink in. The projections were wrong before the building opened, and the response was to update the projection, not reconsider the foundation. The building opened to residents on April 23, 2009. It won a Structural Engineering Project of the Year award that same year. By 2010, the Transbay Joint Powers Authority, the state agency building the adjacent Salesforce Transit Center, hired the geotechnical firm Arup to monitor potential impacts on the Millennium Tower. Arup's measurements revealed the tower had already settled approximately 10 inches into the soil since completion, and was exhibiting a tilt of roughly 1 inch toward the northwest. The original design expectation was 2 to 8 inches of total settlement over the building's entire lifespan. The building had blown past that threshold before anyone called it a problem publicly. Meanwhile, residents began noticing something specific: doors that didn't close quite right, floors that felt slightly off level. A resident on the 36th floor discovered a large crack in a window. Others reported loud creaking sounds. Management's response: the crack was caused by an exterior impact, not the tilt. That response is documented in the building's own communications, but the moment the problem became public was not the moment it became a problem. That is the part most coverage misses entirely. In August 2016, the San Francisco Chronicle published its first major report on the Millennium Tower's structural issues. The building had sunk more than 16 inches and was tilting 24 inches to the west and nearly 8 inches to the north. It was visible, measurable, irrefutable, settling at a rate of 1.5 to 2 inches per year. But the image that made this impossible to ignore was simpler than any engineering report. Residents placed a level on the lobby floor. The bubble did not center. They placed marbles on the floor. The marbles rolled. You could see the tilt in the lobby of a brand new, award-winning luxury skyscraper. The public disclosure triggered immediate legal action. By November 2016, San Francisco's city attorney Dennis Herrera filed a lawsuit against Millennium Partners, the developer, charging them with fraud. By March 2017, the Homeowners Association had filed additional suits against the architects, the engineers, the general contractor Webcore Builders, and the Transbay Joint Powers Authority. At one point, 9 separate lawsuits, approximately 30 to 40 law firms involved, 146 attorneys, and the building was still sinking. Quick pause. Drop it in the comments. Who carries more responsibility here? Millennium Partners, the developer who chose the shallow foundation, or the San Francisco Planning Commission, which approved it in 2003? The second half of this video is going to change how you answer that question. When the sinking became public in 2016, Millennium Partners pointed to the Transbay Joint Powers Authority's construction as the primary cause. Their founding partner told the press when the water levels dropped, the sand compressed and caused the building to settle. That is a factual description of one mechanism. It is not the complete picture. The building had already exceeded its original settlement projections by 2008, before the Transbay excavations, before any dewatering, before any adjacent construction. The TJPA's consultants responded publicly. The evidence did not support the claim that their dewatering was the primary cause. Both sides were pointing at each other. The building kept sinking. And the worst part was not the denial. The worst part was what came next. After years of litigation, a global settlement was reached in 2020. The result? The perimeter pile upgrade, a voluntary $100 million foundation fix. The plan called for drilling 52 new concrete-filled steel piles along the perimeter, this time reaching bedrock, 250 feet down, and using hydraulic jacks to transfer the building's load onto those new piles. Construction began in November 2020. By August 2021, the fix was making things worse. The lead engineer halted the work voluntarily. Drilling through the old bay clay was causing ground vibrations that were destabilizing the soil. The building was sinking faster because they were trying to fix it. By the time work stopped, the building had accumulated an additional inch of settlement, caused directly by the repair effort. The engineering team revised the plan, cut the piles from 52 to 18, accept a smaller scope, get the building stable. The revised plan worked, but it produced a building anchored to bedrock on only two sides. Veteran geotechnical engineer Robert Pike raised a specific concern. A foundation anchored on only two sides creates an asymmetric load distribution. In a major earthquake, the building could respond differently than a fully anchored structure. That concern is not resolved. It is documented, and it is still open. This is the part most coverage glosses over. Jerry Dodson, a resident on the 6th floor, led a separate legal group that sued Millennium Partners, the City of San Francisco, and the TJPA simultaneously. His position, documented in court filings, Millennium Partners knew about the settlement problems as early as 2008, and units were still being sold without full disclosure until 2016. That allegation is part of the same legal record the city attorney's office used when it filed its own fraud lawsuit against the developer. Today, in 2024, the average resale loss for a unit in the Millennium Tower is over 20%. A penthouse that sold for $13 million resold for $9 million. One unit on the 5th floor sold at a 52% loss from its original purchase price. Some lenders are still not offering standard mortgages on units in the building. The HOA has hired a public relations firm and produced a short film about the engineering project to attract buyers, lenders, and insurers back to the building. A PR firm for a skyscraper, because the engineering fix alone was not enough. Here is what makes this more than a San Francisco story. The San Francisco Building Code does not require foundations to reach bedrock. That is the code, in place when this building was approved and still in place today. The same soft soil underlies approximately 30% of San Francisco's built environment, including parts of the financial district, including sites with approved developments. The approval process that produced the Millennium Towers permit in 2003 was not an exception. It was the system working as designed. The city's independent engineering review team was created specifically for the Millennium Tower situation. It did not exist before this building became a problem. That is the question worth sitting with. About every high-rise approved in a coastal city on soft soil by a process that didn't require independent oversight until after the first building started moving. As of mid-2023, the perimeter pile upgrade is officially complete. 18 piles drilled 275 feet to bedrock have transferred £18 million of load off the original foundation. Engineer Ronald Hamburger declared the project a success on June 19, 2023. The total tilt at the northwest corner stands at slightly under 29 inches, with approximately 1 to 2 inches of tilt recovery since the fix was completed. The model had predicted 4 inches of recovery within 6 months. Actual recovery, approximately 1 inch. By early 2024, monitoring data showed a new pattern, a slight sinking in the center of the foundation separate from the corner settlement. Geotechnical engineer Robert Pike described this, known as dishing, as a potential long-term concern. Dishing can cause cracking in the foundation slab. Cracks allow water ingress. Water accelerates corrosion of steel reinforcement. Corroding steel expands, and expansion creates further cracking. Pike's assessment from February 2024, 1/10 of an inch is not that much, but it is not heading in the right direction. The building will be monitored by sensors for the next 8 years. The Leaning Luxury won engineering awards. It sold out in 3 years. It attracted the wealthiest buyers in the wealthiest city on the West Coast. It was also a building whose foundation exceeded settlement projections before anyone moved in, whose fix made it tilt faster before it stabilized it, and whose success story is being managed by a PR firm because the market doesn't fully believe the engineering reports yet. Both of those things are true at the same time, and somewhere right now a real estate agent is showing a unit in a building approved by a process that didn't require a bedrock foundation. The buyer is asking about the view, the amenities, the neighborhood. They are not asking about page 12 of the soil report. They do not know page 12 exists. The soil report is public. The permit database is public. Nobody told them to look. The question this story leaves open is simple. How deep is the soil report on the building you are about to sign a contract for? If this changed how you think about skyscrapers, share it. There is probably someone in your network who lives in a high-rise or is about to sign a contract for one. They deserve to know this story first. Subscribe. Next week, 432 Park Avenue, New York City. The tallest residential tower in the Western Hemisphere when it opened. The condo board lawsuit alleges $125 million in damages, flooding, mechanical failures, and sounds the engineers called normal that the residents called unbearable. Subscribers get it first. We read the permit files, we follow the money, and we cover what happens when both of those things point in the same direction. Next week, 432 Park Avenue, 96 floors, units up to $95 million. And a sound the wind engineers flagged during the design phase that got cut from the final plans to save money.